Drake Sasser. Round 3 here from the Atlanta Invitational. And the Temur Colossus, it's most cards like Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot actually figure to be pretty good here.
Oh yeah, gaining some life that can set Majors back and give you some time to set up kind of your combo here.
All right, and this is the card I was talking about for turn 1, Michael Majors. It is Bomat Courier. So the Robot Raging Goblin. It's a 1/1 haste, and when it attacks, it exiles a card face down. So Michael doesn't actually know what that card is. At any point, Michael can pay a red mana and sacrifice the Courier, and he will discard his whole hand and put all the cards under the Courier into his hand.
And this is a very efficient deck. Part of the goal for Majors here is just to empty his hand anyway, so this card plays very well.
Whew. Well, if 1's good, how about 2? Michael's going to play a second Courier and knock Drake down to 17.
And for the Temur Colossus deck, obviously the name implies red mana. The Colossus is a giant colorless spell. You might be wondering how many, if any, Kozilek's returns are features in Drake's deck.
Yeah.
0 copies in the 75. That's not what he's up to here.
And yeah, triple 1-drop from Michael. Post-combat, he played an Inventor's Apprentice. And I really like this, Bomat Couriers quickly empty your hand with 1-drops. This seems great.
Mm-hmm.
Drake, for turn 2, though, will play a blocker. It is Glintnest Crane, the 1/3. Looks at the top 4. If he had an artifact, he could put it into his hand. However, the top 4 cards of his deck, no artifacts, so it's just a creature.
Miss there is problematic, though the 1/3 does square off very well against Bomat Couriers. So this will ask Majors to answer this in some way. Of course, once your Courier gets enough cards under it, or you get few enough cards in hand, exactly, you attack it, get another card under it, sacrifice it in combat somewhere, and draw a bunch of cards.
It looks like Majors has a copy of Fiery Temper in his hand. Now, that's a card that for 1 red madnesses to deal 3, something I think Michael would like to do off Bomat Couriers. At the same time, for 3 mana, he could just shoot the blocker and keep attacking.
Right. And in his hand here, we see a copy of Fiery Temper, a couple lands. He's kind of thinking about when he wants to actually just discard this hand. There's a Scrap Heap Scrounger there as well. Though for now, the board's kind of at parity. He doesn't have a ton of pressure. I kind of like just casting the Scrounger and applying more pressure.
Well, that's what he's going to do. Cast Scrap Heap Scrounger, passes. He did swing with Inventor's Apprentice that turn.
Yep, the Apprentice can safely attack into the Crane here, and there's a chance that Drake doesn't block. He's getting some chip damage there.
It looks like Drake didn't block, so some free damage for Michael. Not sure if he had the trick. Drake, though, will start ramping. His turn 3 play is Cultivator's Caravan. In this deck, a lot of times it's just a 3-mana artifact that taps for an additional mana of any color, but it can, if Drake gets 3 power of creatures in play, it can crew into a 5/5.
And one of the incentives to not block with the Crane there for Drake, Majors is obviously playing some artifacts. He's got red mana up, Built to Smash could be on his radar.
Yeah, Michael will swing again. This time it's with the team. If it is Built to Smash,
you wonder why Majors wasn't attacking with the other creatures.
Yeah, I think Majors stole 2 damage there.
Right.
So Major's going to swing the whole team. It looks like Glintnest Crane is going to attempt to make a block. There's 7 power worth of creatures attacking right now. Majors, I think, is just fine putting any one of these guys into the graveyard. And Drake will block the Courier from turn 1. And before damage, Michael's going to use that ability, discards his hand, and his whole hand has... Oh, he's in a Madness? Bloodhall Priest into play. That was the play I was talking about. So this stacks in such a way. Bloodhall Priest, when it enters the battlefield, if you have no cards in hand, it deals 2 damage. Now, this works that because Michael discarded his whole hand and Madness this into play, there's an instance where he has no cards in his hand, so he gets to throw 2 damage around, and then he'll draw all those cards that were under the Bomat Courier. So the 2 damage, you see here, shoots at Drake, puts him to 13, and then the unblocked 6 power worth of creatures will put him to 7.
This will apply a lot of pressure here for Majors. Now he has a bunch of cards in hand, so we won't really be able to get any more Priest triggers, but his deck has a good amount of reach still in. He has an Unlicensed Disintegration he can draw to, more Fiery Tempers. Shouldn't be too hard for Majors to close the game from here.
Yeah, he did just get a 4/4 flyer, too.
And notably, Drake, he only has 1 non-creature artifact. He's very far from executing his deck's game plan here. If he wanted to start winning the game here, he would want to already have multiple Prophetic Prisms, way to reduce the cost of the Colossus. He really can't do anything here, and all of his Radiant Flames are on the sideboard, and the main deck is just a bunch of stuff.
5 mana is Sky Sovereign. Deals 3 to a creature when it enters the battlefield. He's going to have to shoot something down. Yeah, Bloodhall Priest is a 4/4. Can't kill that, although he'd like to.
There's really no good options as well. There's a 3-power creature, a 2-power creature, and a Bomat Courier. And the Bomat Courier is worth some cards, but it's just a 1/1, and Drake's at 7.
Yeah, he goes for Scrap Heap Scrounger there. I think you mentioned it, even if Drake had the Metalwork Colossus this turn, I mean, it's just one blocker. Michael might be able to get around that.
Right.
Michael will play another Inventor's Apprentice. Looks like he might try to empty his hand. We'll see. Scrap Heap Scrounger, just more plays, more plays. Then we'll Lightning Axe the blocker that discards the last card in his hand, gets to attack, empty-handed. This is more than enough damage, and Drake scoops in the cards.
Yep, the Lightning Axe there technically enabled the trigger from the Bloodhowl Priest, but also no blockers
Didn't
there
even
for
need
Drake.
it, yeah.
Exactly.
It's had him dead by 5 points of overkill. That looked great for Michael.
Yeah, that was really excellent. Anytime that Bomat Courier gets to 4 cards under it, those are the games that the Red-Black aggro is going to win fairly effectively. And also, Drake's deck really wasn't delivering on the access he needed to, and things should get better for him post-sideboard anyway.
Yeah, so let's look at the sideboards then. You said things will get better post-sideboard for Drake Sasser. Okay, Temur Colossus. He's got a playset of Ceremonious Rejection, a playset of Radiant Flames. Okay, have to think that one's coming in. 2 Negates, 2 Thought-Knot Seers, a Metal Spinner's Puzzle Knot, and then 2 copies of the card Consulate Surveillance.
So basically the big update here, we're getting Radiant Flames coming into the deck. He doesn't really have much in the way of interaction in the main deck. Deadlock Trap and some blockers is really what he's looking at. So the big update is really just the Radiant Flames, particularly on the play. He'll be able to pressure Majors with those. There's some argument for Negate. Majors has a bunch of non-creature spells, but given the density of the efficient creatures, I think primarily it's just going to be Radiant Flames.
All right, so for Michael Majors, 2 Sinister Concoction, 4 Galvanic Bombardment, 3 Lost Legacy, 2 Key to the City, a Sky Sovereign, and 3 Transgress the Mind. Okay, this looks like a great matchup for him already, game 1, but he actually has a lot of good sideboard here, too.
Yeah, Key to the City to punch through any potential blockers is going to be great in a matchup like this. You don't want to have to engage in combat with the Colossus.
Right.
Transgress the Mind can clear that kind of stuff out of the hand as well.
Yeah.
Something interesting to note, you might be thinking, should I bring in Lost Legacy? Well, you can't name artifacts with Lost Legacy.
Oh, you can't name artifacts, so that's probably a no-go.
That one's not going to do too much here.
But Transgress against a ramp deck, I really like that, and I think you said about Key to the City is pretty spot on, too.
Yep. Just get he has some removal spells in the main deck. You don't need a ton of Unlicensed Disintegration, Lightning Axe, that kind of stuff. So I expect to see him trim on those.
Yeah, does Unlicensed Disintegration, I know that removal's weaker here, but does that card ever come out?
Probably not. Certainly not more than 2 copies. You know, there's plenty of creatures to kill here. That one's probably staying in. The Lightning Axe are a little on the weaker side in a matchup like this. There's rarely going to be a situation where there's 2 creatures where you're going to Axe Temper, which is kind of the A plan for that card.
Well, Michael Majors originally here, playing in his home state from Georgia, now living in Roanoke, Virginia. He's 2-0 here at our Season 3 Invitational. Now, we have Season 1 coming up here on the SCG Tour. It starts actually tomorrow with our Open. We have an Open here in the Atlanta Invitational weekend, and it goes all the way through next June. So 6 months of Opens. We're going to run down just where the tour is going to visit. So we do have the Open this weekend. Then 2 weeks later, we have the Players' Championship, and we take a month and a half break really before we start the 2017 season. But then come join us. It starts in Columbus with a standard Open. Then we move to the next week to Richmond. We have our regional championships in Modern. We're going to talk more about that later. Take a break, and then we have our first team Open ever in Baltimore. So you show up with a team of 3 players. One of you plays Standard, one of you plays Modern, one of you plays Legacy. I personally think that might just be the event of the season here. Really looking forward to it.
Very excited for that tournament.
Week after that, we'll be in Indianapolis for our first Modern Open of the year. Then we go to Dallas, where we have another Modern Open, and we have our Legacy Open, the one of Season 1. It's April 8th and 9th in Worcester, Massachusetts. You're going to want to make it out to that if you're a Legacy player. I know you are. It's where you get to dust off your Delvers, your Dazes.
I've settled for casting them in Modern, but you can't do that with Daze.
All right. Then we come back here to Atlanta for Standard, then Louisville, Baltimore, Charlotte, and our Season 1 Invitational weekend is going to be June 30th through July 2nd. Game number 2 here. Drake Sasser back on the play. He is down a game. He really got run out of the building there by Michael Majors. The triple 1-drop on the play from Michael was way too fast for Drake.
Yep.
And this is going to be a lot more modest. Turn 1 tap land for Michael Majors, and he's on the draw. I think we're going to see a different kind of game.
Absolutely. And one thing for Sasser in Game 1, his deck really wasn't performing. He didn't get the volume of non-creature artifacts that he needed in the early game, so we'll see if his deck can do right by him here as well.
Well, it's doing better this time. His turn 2 Glint Nest Crane, this time it finds an artifact. It's Metalwork Colossus.
All right, if he already has Prophetic Prism, Cultivator's Caravan, that kind of stuff in his hand, that's excellent.
Yeah, it's a Smuggler's Copter for Michael, but this Temur Colossus deck can make a Colossus as early as what, turn 4?
Yeah, you have some turn 4s, turn 2 Prophetic Prism, turn 3 Caravan, turn 4 Hedron Archive.
Yeah, that's great. Drake's turn 3 is going to be a copy of Deadlock Trap, the rare from Kaladesh. Makes 2 energy. It can lock down a Planeswalker or a creature for a turn if he pays an energy. It's also a 3-mana non-creature artifact.
Yep, this will reduce the cost of the Colossus from 11 to 8. Halfway there.
Pia Nalar, the play from Michael. This is going to be his first attack, it looks like. He will crew Smuggler's Copter and swing, draw, and discard. You see on Drake's turn, he actually attacked for 1 with Glintnest Crane. He kind of knew that if this Copter was coming over, he wasn't going to block anyway.
Yep. And something that is notable here for Majors, Drake is going to have those Radiant Flames in here post sideboard. So this kind of board here, he's able to commit a lot, and he's not very vulnerable to flames. He just has 1 card worth of value that would be killed by that currently.
So Drake drops to 17. You see one of those sideboard Radiant Flames in his hand. No red mana just yet. His lands are an island, a forest, and a copy of Inventor's Fair.
And it's like in the main deck, there's 1 Spire Bluff Canal and then the Cultivator's Caravan, so he's kind of leaning on a lot of that to make red mana at all. 4 Sylvan Scryings in his main deck. Those primarily are used to find the Sanctum of Ugins, but they can fix his mana as well.
So Drake will play another Glintnest Crane. It finds Prophetic Prism. He's going to play Sanctum of Ugin. It looks like cast the Prophetic Prism, draw a card. So that is the red mana he needs. Not this turn. He'd had to tap out.
Yeah.
But he also has now the Colossus in his hand is discounted down to 6 thanks to the Prism.
And with that trap on tap this turn, he'll be able to stop himself from getting hit by that Copter, giving Majors another loot trigger.
Yeah, and he actually can time that really well, right? Majors will crew the Copter, then Drake taps it.
Yep. So for Majors here, I imagine we'll see him. Well, actually, he doesn't have any profitable attacks without crewing, so he's kind of forced into crewing here.
Yes, he's going to crew the Copter, and now Drake, before attacks, will Deadlock Trap it. That means no draw and discard for Michael. It never actually got to attack. But he will play another Smuggler's Copter, an Inventor's Apprentice, and a land. So Michael's building up a board of his own. Now he is building it up into a possible Radiant Flames out of Drake.
Mm-hmm. This is the turn where we might start to see some fireworks, whether they be giant metal robots or 3 mana of Wrath of God.
It looks like Hedron Archive for Drake Sasser. So if he has a land here, he could play Archive and Radiant Flames. And to start with Hedron Archive. So now 9 mana worth of non-creature artifacts. That Metalcore Colossus is all the way down to costing 2. I guess Drake could just cast it right now. But he just passes the turn. So what does that mean, right? He could have cast it here, I believe. So he has 9 mana of non-creature artifacts.
Representing some kind of trick here.
Yeah, he has a Glintnest Crane and a Colossus in hand, so he had options. Now, taking a look at his deck, can we figure out what he's on?
He has these negates in his sideboard. He doesn't have enough mana to even emerge an Elder Deep Fiend here.
Yeah, but he could negate because of that Prophetic Prism.
Right.
Maybe that's what we're thinking about. Michael, I suppose a card like Key to the City would be really bad news.
I imagine that the plan is to wait to cast the Colossus. If he does have negate, you want to cast the Colossus with negate backup in case unlicensed disintegration happens.
Okay. Yeah, Michael's going to go ahead and crew both Copters here. Only 1 energy left for Drake. Actually, they will both be allowed to attack. So 2 draw and discard triggers for Michael. He does the first. Draws a 3rd Copter. Yeah, doesn't want that. He'll discard it. Try again. Draws Inventor's Apprentice.
One of the big strengths of Smuggler's Copters, even if it's bad because you have one, you just discard it.
Yeah, Michael did draw a discard twice. He discarded the card he drew both times and then just passed the turn. And Drake, you see here, chump blocking both of the Copters. If that's not... that's just putting up a sign saying, I have Radiant Flames in hand, right?
Yeah, that's telegraphing that fairly strongly. Not using the energy for the Deadlock Trap, just making those blocks.
Michael plays a Bomat Courier into it, so he does give Drake another creature. But there's this Smuggler's Copter problem, actually, right? Where even if Drake Radiant Flames the board, plays Metalwork Colossus, these Copters still an issue.
Yeah, he has conserved his life total fairly well. He used to let 18, so it'll take a couple shots from those copters here.
When I like this a lot, another Hedron Archive from Drake means that he has more mana. Now he casts Radiant Flames. He has enough mana of non-creature artifacts that Metalwork Colossus in his hand is free.
So that's a great rate.
Yeah, I'll pay 0 for for this giant rare. So this is the Temur Colossus part of the deck. It is Metalwork Colossus triggering Sanctum of Ugin. This is what the deck does. Colossus getting another Colossus and casting that for free. This is great. So he gets a 10/10. Sanctum of Ugin says when you play a colorless creature with converted mana cost 7 or greater, sacrifice it and go find another one. He finds another Colossus. That one also costs 0. So, yeah, Mike, Drake gets 20 power of creatures for nothing.
Reasonable. Goes from 0 point of power on the board to a lethal attack against an opponent on 19 life.
Now, he only gets one of those. Unlicensed Disintegration here from Majors takes care of one of the Metalwork Colossus.
If you're Majors, you just have to be laser focused here on actually closing the game. So he just wants to get it across as much damage as possible here. He doesn't need to chump block just yet, so I imagine he just wants to get 2 creatures on the battlefield, crew these copters, and beat down here.
Beautiful. Pia Nilar will do that perfectly. So she's cast and brings along a Thopter. They can crew both Smuggler's Copters.
Of course, Drake does still have that energy and that deadlock trap, so he gets to prevent some of this from happening.
Yeah, and Michael does a neat trick here. So Drake attempts to tap a Smuggler's Copter, then Michael uses the Copter to crew the other one. He hits in for 3, putting Drake down to 12. Now, what Michael has to watch out for, though, is the card Inventor's Fair. This is the land in play for Drake. So because Drake does have 3 artifacts, he's going to gain 1 life every turn, on each of his own turns. And for 4 mana, he can sacrifice Inventor's Fair to go get an artifact, presumably another Metalwork Colossus.
That's a good one. He can define Sky Sovereign as well. Can find another Deadlock Trap.
And Drake's going to use the ability of Metalwork Colossus to sacrifice 2 of his artifacts to bring the Colossus from graveyard back to hand. Sacrificed the Deadlock Trap and the Prophetic Prism. Really no need for those anymore.
Yep, the archives here do the bulk of reducing the cost and casting a second Colossus. No longer free, but don't quite need free anymore.
It costs 3, and it looks like Drake has 7 mana sources in play. So he's going to play Cultivator's Caravan. Okay, now the Colossus is free again. 1 mana floating. Here's 2 mana. Plays Glint Nest Crane. No more mana in the mana pool. And that was neat. He could have gotten a Cultivator's Caravan or a Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot. Looks like Drake went for the Puzzle Knot there.
Gaining life is going to be very powerful here. Majors just has to kill Drake before these 10/10s run him over. 6 extra life goes a long way.
Yeah, a swing for 10 from the first Colossus by Drake. Michael blocks. Drake's going to play the Puzzle Knot. And you're right, this life gain's pretty big. Drake goes to 16 and gets 3 energy. And now he plays another Colossus for free. This is the hallmark part of the deck is 0 mana 10/10s.
Yep. Looks a lot more like a modern or a legacy deck when this thing is going off like this.
Yeah, it's fixed affinity in a way. It's a really big payoff, but there's no little affinity things to chain your way up with it.
Kind of like Broodstar affinity before they printed Arcbound Ravager.
Yeah, you just went into one big thing. Except that they had free stuff all the way up the curve, which kind of
this deck is not as good as Broodstar affinity. It's just like a similar thing.
I don't know. Artifact lands don't help you cast Metalwork Colossus. They reduce his cost by 0.
I mean, they tap for mana, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Seems average to me. Here's another Sanctum of Ugin for Drake. On Michael's turn, he had no attacks, which does not bode well here for Michael Majors. Drake's deck, when it turns the corner, hits very hard.
Yep, won't take him too long to close the game with 2 10/10s. Not even a Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot could save Michael here.
Here's a swing for 20 from Drake. Michael's going to crew a Copter. That will jump in the way. Draw and discard. Looks like he drew Sinister Concoction, so that has come in out of the sideboard.
All right, it's a way to get Colossus off the table. I imagine primarily that card's trying to kill a Glint Nest Crane and end the game before we actually get to this phase. Because once the Colossus are on the table, getting them back is really easy if they're not exiled.
Then Michael unlicensed Disintegrations the other Colossus. So he does not take damage. Drake drops back down to 14. But you have to keep in mind, Drake has 3 life gain off the Puzzle Knot. He's gaining life every turn off Inventor's Fair. Well, not anymore. He's sacrificing it. So we'll hold on for a second. He can go get an artifact. I assume it's just more Colossuses. Yeah, more 10-10s. We'll say that.
Yeah.
I know we can pluralize that one.
10-10s.
10-10s.
10s 10.
No, we got to move the
Oh,
I did it backward.
I did it wrong.
All right. Metalwork Colossus number. This is the 4th one he's played. He's cast one of them twice. I don't think he's paid a single mana for any Colossus yet this game.
Why would you?
Sanctum of Ugin in play. So Colossus sacrificing Sanctum of Ugin. This deck's great.
Now he's going to find that one Elder Deep Fiend.
Yeah, you know the card Self-Assembler? This, right? This is cooler. This is Metalwork Colossus is like the king of self-assemblers.
This card is slightly more powerful than Self-Assembler.
I mean, right, they're just both robots that go get their friends.
Yeah, Self-Assembler is probably closer to Aurochs Herd than it is to Metalwork Colossus.
I don't know, this one's made out of metal. It's from Kaladesh. Drake couldn't find enough of these, so he played the Colossus instead. But it's really worked out. It might even be better.
Yeah, that was pretty fortunate on his part there.
Yeah, with that last Sanctum of Ugin, he actually did get as you mentioned, the Elder Deep Fiend. So this is a one of in the deck. Just kind of as a different thing you can get with Sanctum of Ugin. Its ability to tap 4 permanents should mean that Michael's outs are going to be closed off here. I would expect Drake on end step to tap out Michael and then attack for 20.
Yep, you can even just wait till his turn and cast the Deep Fiend for 8. Make sure you can get all the blockers out of the way.
Sinister Concoction from Michael Majors. This kill spell here from Kaladesh should keep Michael alive for a turn. Might not do anything more than that.
Right. It's not really getting him home in the winning the game department.
You go back to Drake's Sasser, untaps with 20 damage. 21 make that worth of creatures.
Yeah. And basically, what Majors picks up on by not conceding this game is just getting more of a read on Drake's play patterns. You know, he knows that he's dead. He's at about 0% in his actual game, still live in the match.
But yeah, so much on Michael's side depends on trying to figure out Drake's hand before it happens in what's going to be a third game, that this is information for him. You know, how aggressively does Drake like to play? What does he find off his targets? Things like that.
Yeah, maybe shows you another sideboard card.
Exactly. 2 Colossus, 2 10-10s. Boom. 2 10-10s swing in. That'll deal 20. Unless Michael does something about it. He's going to start by crewing that second Smuggler's Copter. Yeah, Drake thought about Deep Fiending, then says, okay. You got it.
Yeah, I mean, Majors just kills one of the Colossi if he Deep Fiends, and he's got to wait a turn to kill Michael anyway.
Smuggler's Copter in front of one of the 2 10-10s. Does Michael have a way out here, though? I mean, I guess he can start... You know, Drake has... These are 3 of his 4 Colossus. He's got his 1 Deep Fiend in hand. I don't know. We'll see. So Smuggler's Copter blocks. Michael draws, then discards to Madness a Bloodhall Priest into play.
Okay. The Priest is solid. That could theoretically punch through damage, though, with that Elder Deep Fiend in Sasser's hand. That's going to make it really difficult. Major's avenues to winning probably mostly involve him having more than 2 cards in his hand already, a bunch of Fiery Tempers, and at least 1 Unlicensed Disintegration.
Another Hedron Archive cast by Drake. And a land. So he's actually adding to his artifact count in case he needs to get back a Colossus. We go back to Michael. Michael took, because he had to play the Concoction for 1 and Madness the Priest for 3, he actually did not have enough mana to use Concoction that turn, and he took 10 off one of those 2 hits.
Yep, now Majors is just 1 Colossus hit away from dead here.
And he'll have a turn. He's going to have to find a way to deal 17 through an Elder Deep Fiend. I don't know if I'm not even positive he can stay alive here. This is a lot to ask.
Right. The Deep Fiend makes it very difficult for him to be proactive and also very difficult for him to defend his life total at all.
But we'll see if he can do it. 9 for Majors, 17 for Drake Sasser. Looks like a Hedron Archive is sacrificed by Drake to draw 2 cards.
If Drake could just cast another Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot, that's just more insurance about this game.
Yeah, and that was all on Michael's end step, so now we go back to Drake's attack. And Michael's hoping Drake will show him a sideboard card. He showed him Radiant Flames. Nothing else. Do you think Drake might have Consulate Surveillance in the deck?
It's possible. I don't know.
That card's pretty mopey, but I assume this is if you're registering for them, I would think it's for the red aggro deck.
Yeah, it's reasonable against Bomat Courier.
Oh, not even. All right, here's an attempt to win here by Drake Sasser. He swings with both Colossus. The Sinister Concoction. Michael will go to 8, discard a card, mill himself for 1 to destroy a Colossus. And by discard, I mean Madness Fiery Temper into play. He'll shoot down Glint Nest Crane. Colossus is gone. Michael loses his Thopter. He's staying alive, but Drake's life total hasn't budged in the last 3 turns.
Yeah, and part of his game plan here relies on Drake just entirely mismanaging this Elder Deep Fiend that he knows is in his hand. I think that
Drake has a Select for Inspection in hand. They just chose to not play.
Yeah.
That's a huge show of strength, right when Michael went for that Sinister Concoction. Well, it's going to be a pass of the turn, so Michael will end step get back Scrap Heap Scrounger. He actually looks like he has a sizable counterattack, or he would if there wasn't an Elder Deep Fiend already waiting.
Right. You know, and for Drake, he has so many ways to recur to the Colossus. He doesn't need to use that Select for Inspection to defend it. He can just get that back later. He just needs to give himself chance against that maybe 1% chance that Majors has of winning the game.
Michael goes to attack. Drake says, stop, I have effects. It's Elder Deep Fiend. I'm going to tap both your black sources and both your creatures. Okay, now you can go. Michael plays a Scrap Heap Scrounger and passes. It looks like he is dead.
Yep, Scrounger can't block, and that wouldn't dissuade Sasser from attacking if it could.
Right. And 1 red and only 1 card. Lightning Axe doesn't save him. This should be lethal, yeah. Swing, and we are on to game number 3. Drake Sasser's Temur Colossus deck evens things up.
Yep, it looked mighty good there. He was able to more effectively execute his Colossus plan, had that Radiant Flames off the sideboard, and stayed at a very high life total the entire game.
Yeah, well, what really felt different to me here is it seems like it's all about how Majors' draw. So game 1, Majors, first of all, was on the play. And went Bomat Courier, turn 1, turn 2, second Courier, Inventor's Apprentice. That's one, with haste, some 3 damage in the first 2 turns, and then you have 4 power on the board. It's really fast. That game, Majors was on the draw, so that's a turn. And then his first play was Smuggler's Copter, no 1-drop. Boy, what a difference.
Majors also just drew 4 cards off of the Courier in game 1. And in game 2, he was just kind of sitting there on 2 cards while Drake was just pummeling him on every level.
But it's even more than that. So he did draw 4 cards off the Courier, which is great. And I don't think he cast any of them. He already had enough damage between the card Priest he madnessed off the Courier and his cards on the battlefield that he won by miles game 1. He could have done 10 more damage and Drake wouldn't have been able to stop it. Game 2, Drake didn't take, he was never even behind on the board.
No, he was convincingly ahead most of the time, and in a window where it looked possibly dicey, he just had the Radiant Flames in his hand already.
So we laid out the Season 1 schedule for you after that first game. Also with our Season 1 schedule, we have a new set of playmats. This is for the first half of 2016. So we have 3 exclusive playmats here from Star City Games. First, for entering any of our standard opens or classics, we're giving away a playmat with the Art of Smuggler's Copter here, which I think is pretty fitting given where standard is.
Yeah, this card, I would say that it's playable.
Yeah, just let's see, some Majors deck with 4 of it. Blue, yeah, a lot of decks here playing that card. It's pretty great. The modern one will be given a modern open and classics is Aether Vial. Now, this is the masterpiece art of Aether Vial from Kaladesh. And for Legacy, we'll be giving away Gamble, this one the staple of lands. It's the Eternal Masters art. So 3 playmats available, and they'll be giving away starting tomorrow. That's the open weekend here in Atlanta, and all the way through June 10th and 11th in Charlotte. So you can get it starting tomorrow and for most of next year.
Love the Kaladesh style of art. These are some pretty sick pieces.
All right, we'll get back to our match. Players contemplating their mulligans to get ready for a third game. Michael back on the play. And he starts on a tap land, so none of that triple 1-drop this time. Drake really had to think about that hand, so I'm curious what he's up to. For Michael, his draw, this is his game 2 draw all over again. It's turn 2 Smuggler's Copter.
And for Sasser's deck, there's different kinds of elements that be missing from an opener. If he's light on cogs, the hand I think is more likely to be a mulligan than if he's light on actual ways to end the game. So he draws a lot of cards if his hand is full on cogs. But once he starts casting Prophetic Prism on turn 2, he's doing what he wants to do.
Yeah, no Glint Nest Crane that time. It was Prophetic Prism from Drake. His mana, though, is great here. And now Majors will look to get some damage in. He will play Sinister Concoction. That's not damage. Just, I hope if I'm a fan of Majors, yeah, land go. He doesn't have a creature. This does not seem good for him.
No, I'm slightly concerned that he possibly over-sideboarded here by putting those concoctions in the deck. If it's just a removal spell that went out, whatever. If he lost on something like a Lightning Axe, that's fine. I hope that there's no creatures in the sideboard. I can't imagine that there are.
Aether Hub for Drake. Looks like he might play another Prism. Yeah, I mean, if players just sit here building up their board, I mean, that favors Drake. Game 2, we saw just such a turnaround from him. It wasn't, by the time he had a 0-mana Colossus, it wasn't just one. He chained 2 of them and then had 2 more the next turn.
Yep.
Yeah, Michael's first play of the game is Bloodhall Priest, casting it for the full 4 mana, crewing and swinging Smuggler's Copter, discarding that mountain that Drake knew about. I guess so. This is not...
He's on the board.
Yeah, but for an aggro deck, oof, I would hope for more.
Big test here. Sasser did not have Caravan on 3. Does he have Archive on 4? Hedron Archive here is huge.
Something like Archive into Puzzle Knot. Remember, the Temur Colossus deck is very good at making a 10-10 on turn 4 or 5.
Yep.
And Bloodhall Priest doesn't fly, doesn't have evasion. I guess the first Colossus, the Sinister Concoction's ready for.
Okay. So we've got a lot of 2-mana spells.
Yes. Drake's going to play 2 copies of Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot. His land for the turn there was a copy of Hanvir Battlements.
So gains 6 life there off the Puzzle Knots, which is very significant. This is the kind of hand that's totally fine for Drake, especially against this kind of draw for Michael. He has so much time, and looks like possibly he is light on that actual endgame, but he'll have plenty of time to find that.
Michael swinging with the Copter. It puts Drake down to 20. Remember, he gained a lot off those Puzzle Knots. And now Michael's going to play Transgress the Mind. You'd mentioned that it was there. And it's a pretty big hit. Drake's hand is 2 lands, Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot, Elder Deep Fiend, and Metalwork Colossus. Well, yeah, Transgress Exile, so that Colossus, that's going to be gone.
Yeah, that's huge. And also right now, Drake has no creatures. He's very far off of making that Deep Fiend.
Yeah, he does have a copy of Sanctum of Ugin in his hand. So if he gets that first creature, you have to figure he can get a lot more. Mm-hmm. But the first one is going to be tough.
And this is another reason why having Hedron Archive on turn 4 would have been so significant. He'd be much closer to actually just casting Deep Fiend for 8.
Well, right, Drake was hoping that turn that his play was going to be Sanctum of Ugin, free Metalwork Colossus, sack it, get another. It would have been a Sanctum, Caravan, free Colossus, sack Sanctum, get free Colossus, go.
Yeah.
It would have been a huge turn. Instead, he's just going to play a third Puzzle Knot and go to 23, I suppose.
Yeah. Cultivator's Caravan gets him some more mana on the table, so now he is up to 6. He's just 2 mana sources away, or 1 Hedron Archive from casting that Deep Fiend, which will get something going.
Michael crews the Copter, swinging for 3. I mean, there's this problem, right? We're an aggro deck on Michael Majors' side, as he shoots Drake down to what will eventually be 17. But these Puzzle Knots, I mean, this is a jerk of a card.
I mean, he's gained 9 life already.
9
more potential on the way, yeah.
Ugh. Well, a draw from Drake Sasser. Not a creature, but it is a copy of Sky Sovereign.
That can pluck away this Scrap Heap Founder for a second.
Yeah, his hand is Sky Sovereign, Sanctum of Ugin, Elder Deep Fiend. He's going to go ahead and play Sanctum. And this is getting to be pretty neat. This is 7 mana sources for Drake as he plays Sky Sovereign. 1 more mana source, and he will cast the Deep Fiend. And it's not just 1 Deep Fiend, he's got Sanctum of Ugin, so it would be pretty strong here.
Yep, you'd be able to find Colossus right away. Really
crew the Sky Sovereign, go kill something else.
Yep.
It'd be big.
Yep.
He shoots down the Scrounger. We go back over to Majors. Bomat Courier the play. That's actually big. It can crew the Copter, and now a swing for 7 at Drake Sasser. He will be forced to have that land next turn.
Yeah, and for Sasser, there's not a lot of just dead draws coming off of the top here, though there are some things that will cause him to stumble, not really be able to execute on this turn. Untapped land is really what he's looking for.
And it looks like Botanical Sanctum.
That's
so close.
That's not a great one.
I mean, he can sack these puzzle knots, right? He has 3 puzzle knots in play. And what's neat about this is even if he sacrifices them both, he still has enough mana to have a free Metalwork Colossus.
Yep.
Goes up to 13 energy, plays Botanical Sanctum, passes. But is this Sinister Concoction? I'm starting to think it's going to matter more than we let on.
Yeah, with just the 1 Sanctum, Sasser is only going to be able to produce 1 Colossus. So you can make Deep Fiend and Colossus, but Michael can clean one of those up, and he has a significant board presence outside of that as well.
Yeah, he's been drawing and discarding every turn with Smuggler's Copter. I would think if in Michael's spot, if he just finds a second Sinister Concoction, he can kill, or Unlicensed Disintegration, he can kill spell his way to victory here. 1 Colossus won't be enough.
Disintegration would be phenomenal.
He's had a lot of shots at it.
How about Pia Nalar as well? That can remove
I like
blockers.
that right now. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The sacrifice ability. Jeez. So Pia will be cast. The Thopter will crew Smuggler's Copter. Bomat Courier. Bloodhall Priest. Smuggler's Copter swing in for 8. Drake's going to drop to 5.
And that Copter trigger picked up a Fiery Temper.
Ooh. Drake's going to need more life gain. These puzzle knots just not enough. Or he might need... I guess this has to start with Radiant Flames.
Radiant Flames doesn't clean up the Bloodhall Priest, though.
You're not wrong. Yeah, he'll sacrifice a puzzle knot. If he draws Metalwork Colossus, that would be a huge draw here for Drake.
Getting to double Colossus and then leave up Elder Deep Fiend.
Exactly, and he can merge it because they're all free. The Colossus are still free. I think that's what Drake's looking for. He goes to 8 by cracking a puzzle knot. Can he do it? Glint Nest Crane, maybe.
Okay. 4 looks at something.
Yeah, as odd as it sounds, Glint Nest Crane might be his play here.
It's a blocker, too. That's great.
Blocker. If he finds Colossus, he gets 2 of them, still has enough mana for Deep Fiend. Yeah, I think that's where he goes. He needs Metalwork Colossus. Let's look at the top of the deck. Can he do it? Seeing here, right? Because if he starts on Elder Deep Fiend, then he correctly taps the Sanctum.
Yeah, very minor thing. He was looking at tapping Forest, but that Sanctum being sacrificed is a big part of the best possible line here.
Hedron Archive is the find. That's not what he wanted.
Excellent on turn 4, not very good here.
Yeah, now the question is, can he stay alive? He's going to try to do it with this Elder Deep Fiend, and it might be enough. That usually buys him a turn. We'll see.
Really unfortunate thing here is he has to cast the Deep Fiend here on Major's combat, so he can't crack the Sanctum and find the Colossus and cast it on his own turn here.
Right. So we go to Michael Major's turn. We're going to see that play out. Major's hand very good here. Another Concoction. It looks like Concoction, Disintegration, and Fiery Temper. That's just a beating. I mean, between Temper and Disintegration, Drake's at a virtual 2.
Yep. And then there's a couple creatures on Michael's board here.
Yeah. Oof.
Bomat Courier with 1 card under it. He did use it to crew the Copter the first time it came down to get more damage with the Bloodhall Priest.
Yeah. Goes to attacks. It's going to have to be... Yeah, it's going to have to be emerged off of Glint Nest Crane. Drake will do that. Here's Elder Deep Fiend. Is he going to trigger his Sanctum? I assume. Yes, he's picking his tap targets first, though.
Yep.
You know, Michael might just have him dead, actually. This turn, right now.
Well, the Deep Fiend sure won't be able to block if that matters.
Well, he can use Deep Fiend to crew Sky Sovereign. But even then, let's watch this play out.
Well,
I'm not convinced that Drake gets another turn.
As long as this Pia's on the battlefield, the Concoction is there, Michael has multiple ways to punch through and then just cast these burn spells.
Right. Looks like Drake's going to tap those 4 creatures, the Courier, the Pia, the Copter, and the Priest. Now he sacrifices Sanctum of Ugin. He's going to go get Metalwork Colossus. Remember, Michael with a lot of burn here.
Yeah, so what I imagine we'll see transpire here, Michael can attack with his 1/1. If the Sky Sovereign gets crewed, he can remove that as a blocker in multiple ways.
Well, Michael can just attack. It flies, right?
Yep.
And if Drake doesn't block,
Then
Michael
he
can
pumps
pump it with Pia.
Yep. I don't know if he has the mana to make this lethal on this turn.
No, it's a swing for 1 with the Thopter. If he has a land in hand, he can do it. He could pump it. That would put Drake to 6. Then he'd have Temper plus Disintegration. Dead.
Either way, this is a really bad spot for
Yeah.
Drake. He's
Yeah, I'm
already
not into
expended 3 of his puzzle. He has the 1 puzzle not left to gain 3 life, but now he's out that Deep Fiend. That's the only Deep Fiend in the deck.
He's going to crew Sky Sovereign. Drake wants that block. I don't think Michael's going to give it to him. We'll see which way he wants to do it. Looks like Sinister Concoction is the play.
Concoction will allow him to discard Fiery Temper, do 3 upstairs there.
That's what he's going to do. Discarding Fiery Temper, 3 to Drake. Drake goes to 5, kills the Sky Sovereign, mills a card. It's another Pia, sure. Now the Thopter's swinging in for 1. I was wondering if Michael was going to pump there. He did not. Drake's at 4, and he'll pass. Michael's last cards in hand is an Unlicensed Disintegration and another Sinister Concoction. This is really hard for Drake to survive.
Yep.
He's got 1 more Puzzle Knot. He is, this would be his 6th Puzzle Knot trigger?
Yeah.
So Michael successfully has done 31 this game.
And when you're not making Emrakuls and Ishkanas with your Puzzle Knot, you really need to be more focused on killing your opponent. Drake just wasn't able to produce Colossus at the rate that he needed to, and Michael had a really slow draw here. He wasn't doing anything until turn 4 when he cast that Bloodhall Priest.
Hedron Archive for Drake Sasser. I also wonder if he needs to draw into Radiant Flames, or... I mean, there's this issue that Michael can empty his hand, shock with the Priest. There's just too many damage sources coming from Majors' side. Between the Disintegration in his hand, the no blocking abilities from Pia, the 2 damage from Bloodhall Priest, I don't know. That's...
And Majors has a significant amount of damage with flying, so Sasser can't draw into multiple Metalwork Colossus or anything like that.
He's going to play the Colossus. Drake would need what? He would need a Kozilek's Return in his graveyard, and then maybe he could win from here.
Yep.
Kozilek's Return, of course. Actually, not a card in his list.
Just Radiant Flames for sweepers. Multiple Deep Fiends in his deck would go a long way, but he only has the 1.
What has happened to Standard? That was before Kaladesh, that was the thing to do, was to Deep Fiend your Kozilek's Returns.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious about the choice to play Radiant Flames as your sweeper over Kozilek's Return. Of course, he didn't produce any sweeper in this game anyway, so it's kind of a moot point here.
Right. And now we see...
Guess you got to kill those Spell Quellers, but the Converge mechanic not very strong against that card either.
Unlicensed Disintegration on end step on the Colossus. Drake will draw 2. Doesn't matter. Glintnest Crane and land. No, it does not. And there is the handshake. Michael Majors improves to 3-0. Red-black aggro taking Temur Colossus in 3.
Yeah.